Hey, what's up, everybody? We are ready to go live. I am talking about the numbers today, and I'll be on camera soon. I just got to get some stuff set up back here. So, yeah, we are going to be talking about numbers. So, if you if you are a woman expert, come on into the room, because if you're using your corporate salary, if you're using your corporate salary as a benchmark for your expert rates, you're making a mistake. And so I want to talk about that today because I've been having so many conversations with women experts about their pricing, and y'all are killing me. You know how they say on the movie, "You killing me, Smalls." Y'all are killing me. So I want to make sure that we talk about that. Now, listen, we're also experimenting today because I'm trying out my new video camera. I'm also live on Substack, so you can go check me out over there. I'm on YouTube, Facebook. I'm not on Instagram today. We gonna give Instagram a break over here. But I wanted to really come on here and talk to you about your pricing, because it's a question that I get asked all the time. And I know that when I talk with women experts and I say, okay, they tell me, oh, I got hired to do this, or I got hired on a retainer, I got hired to speak, I got hired for a corporate contract. And then I ask the price. I'm like, come on, y'all. Come on. But I get it, right? I get it. Listen, we come out of corporate. And when we come out of corporate and we come into the entrepreneurial space, we are used to somebody paying us a salary. And so, say for instance, you were making 100,000, 200,000, $75,000. You'll then look at you'll look at that as, well, that was my salary. When I get into entrepreneurship, I need to make at least that amount of money. We've all done it. I did it, right? When I was leaving corporate, I was like, okay, I had my multiple six-figure salary. I'm like, I just need to make sure that I make that salary. Well, that's a mistake. And I'm going to tell you exactly why that is a mistake. But before I get into it, just in case you don't know who I am, I'm Kelly Charles Collins. I am a retired trial attorney. So I'm, I'm retired, but I'm still a lawyer, right? My licenses are still all good. So if I want to practice, I still could. I celebrated my 30th year as an attorney last year. My entire time that I practiced, I was a trial lawyer. And the first part of my practice, I was a public defender. And for the majority of my practice, over 2 decades, I was an employment trial lawyer, which meant that I was lead counsel and the trusted advisor to legal departments, C-suites, on cases that involved employment discrimination, retaliation, anything between, the fights between the employers and the employees. Yeah, that was my job. And what I learned in that role is a lot of things, right? I learned how to try cases. I learned how to think. I think that was the most important thing that I learned, was how to think and to synthesize information. I learned how to communicate in high stakes situations. I learned how to communicate with different people at different levels all at the same time. Because if you've ever been on a jury, you know that the jury is comprised of many different people with many different backgrounds, educational levels, all the things. And so I have to tell one story to all those people and convince them to do what I want them to do, right? So I got all of those skills from being a trial lawyer. But then I transitioned out of the practice of law at the end of 2019, 2020. I said, hey, we're going all in on entrepreneurship. And I became a professional speaker, working with organizations and helping them with their culture around unconscious bias, courageous conversations, and now really honing in on high stakes communications. But what I also learned during that time when I started out was that I was treated a little bit differently, um, in terms of being a speaker than some others right? And what I mean by that is, as a Black woman, as a not a non, right, a non other woman, as a Black woman expert, I had to do a little bit more in terms of um, having people understand the value. Now, I will say in the very beginning, it was easier because of the topic that I was speaking about, and that was during the George Floyd time, and so talking about unconscious bias, hey, everybody wanted to pay that, and they didn't care what it cost. But then I also had those who were like, well, we're in the pandemic, so you should speak for exposure. We need a diversity person. We need diversity on our stage. We'd like to have you there. But, people are giving up their fees because it's the pandemic. We want you to be there. Or having conversations with multi-billion dollar global corporations who float kind of a six-figure contract to you. However, when you calculate it, when you back it all out, which is what I'm going to be talking about today, when you back it all out, really what I was going to be doing was working for probably less than minimum wage, right? And so we have to not look at like the numbers just as a number. We really have to understand what is behind those numbers. So the other thing that I realized is that I wasn't the only one. I wasn't the only Black woman expert or Black or brown woman expert who was being, treated in this way and basically exploited in this way. And so, always being asked to speak for exposure, to, charge less, or can you do it for this instead of that? And I started having conversations with those women experts. And it made me realize that we have to do something different. We have to work on what is happening with us so that we can show up in a way that people respect us. We teach people how to treat us, right? And so we have to make sure that we show up powerfully so that we can reduce some of that friction. And that made me start working with women experts, and I've done different things with women experts. So first I started, working with just speakers and understanding, how do you get on stage, and, people wanting to get paid to speak. But what I realized when I started getting my ideal clients in the door is that we weren't just speakers. We were what I now call expertpreneurs. We're people who have a deep level of expertise. 10 plus years of expertise, 20 plus years of expertise, right? Coming out of these corporate spaces and wanting to make a living with our mind, with our intellectual capital. And it's not just about speaking. Speaking is the vehicle for us to get there. And I have my, somewhere I had my, oh Lord, I left it over there. I left my mouse over there because I wanted to make sure if there is any comments. So I may have to get up and go get it. But I wanted to, I was looking at us as people who not just speak, right? We do speak. That's the vehicle for conveying the information, for making the transformations. However, we are speakers, we're trainers, we're coaches, we're consultants, we're authors, right? We're strategists. We're doing all of this. And so it's not just about being a speaker, it's actually being an expertpreneur, someone who is making money from their expertise or making money from your mind. And that is a different, for me, when I think about it, I think that is a different mindset and a different shift when you think about what is the value of that. Because oftentimes, and I've said this before, is that when people think of you as a speaker, oh, you're giving information. Information is free. And because information is free and it's out there everywhere, even though you might put your little spin on it, I think it has less value to people when they just think of you as quote unquote a speaker. And when you think of yourself as a speaker. And so I've been working with women experts for the past several years and really just listening and watching and trying to understand what there is. And probably sometime last year, hold on, let me get my mouse. Hold on. All right, just in case any comments come up, I want to be able to see them. I hope I can see them. I need my glasses then too. But I was walking one day and I started thinking about what is the disconnect? Because clearly there is a disconnect. I was trying to think about what is the disconnect between us leaving corporate and having these very high powered roles, right? VPs, directors, lawyers, doctors, accountants, whatever it is, senior managers. What is the disconnect from coming from that space and then coming into entrepreneurship? And why is it that when we make that transition, that we all of a sudden forget who we are? We just forget. We act like, we're just brand new to this. Now, we're not brand new to this. We're brand new to maybe entrepreneurship. We're brand new to trying to make money directly from our expertise. But as I posted on my social media earlier this week, if you can make millions for corporations with your expertise, and you can make millions for yourself with that same expertise. But we come from corporate, so we're making all this money in corporate. We're doing all these great things. We're managing teams. We're managing multi-million dollar budgets. We're trying cases. We're strategic and trusted advisors for C-suite. We're trying their cases. We're lead counsel. We're doing all the things, right? We're doing all the things. Then we come into entrepreneurship and we want to kind of do those same things. We want to have those same types of roles, and we may want to do it in corporate again, right? We may want to go back to corporate, but as a consultant, as a trainer, or we may want to do this for other women, right? Or other people in terms of being a coach, being a strategist, being a mentor. But we forget how badass we are. We forget all of the things that we were doing. The other thing that we do is, even if we do remember, we have not been taught how to translate what we did in corporate to an entrepreneurial space. It's not the same thing. It's not a one-to-one transfer, right? Unless, for example, as a lawyer, I was leaving the legal field, working for a firm to go practice law. But that's not what I wanted to do. And that's not what most of you are doing. You're not leaving your role either by force or by choice to then go into that same role outside. You want to leverage the expertise, leverage the experience that you had in that role. And now you want to do it for yourself. Now you want to be the person that goes back into an organization and helps them as a trainer, as a consultant, maybe even as a coach. And so what happens is that we get scattered and we don't know how to transfer the skills. So we take those skills, we take our resume and we dump it into the entrepreneurial space. You cannot dump your resume there, right? The other thing that we take, and which I want to talk about today, is the numbers. So we take that salary that we were making or that hourly rate that we were making and we dump that into our entrepreneurial rates. You cannot do that. It is a huge mistake, and here is why. At a very basic level, employees trade time for money. When you are hired to do a role, when you're hired by a corporation for a job, they bring you in, they've decided, right, based on their budget, based on their initiatives, based on their strategic planning, based on, their profit margins, they've decided, and based on, whatever their objectives are for the year, they've decided that they need certain roles. They need certain people to be able to do certain things, to do certain tasks, right? To complete certain tasks. And because of that, they create jobs in their organization. When they create those jobs in their organization, then they use that, they create job descriptions. And when you look at the job description, what do they look at? They're looking at some of the experience that they think that you need. But most of the job description is the tasks, the responsibilities. I need you to be able to do A, B, C, D, E, and whatever it is else they want, right? They need you to be able to do those tasks because that job fits specifically somewhere in their overall plan. Okay. And when you are able to complete that role, then that works towards achieving whatever goals and milestones that they have set inside of their organization towards their bottom line. Now, when they look at that role and they look at that job description, they're looking at their profit margins and they're saying, okay, in order for us to achieve this profit margin, then all of these jobs that we have can only fit into this bucket of money. And when we have this bucket of money and we have these number of roles, we're going to divide it up, figure out, allocate however we want to. And so, whatever role that you had, they've allocated that amount of money to that role. Does that mean that that's what that role, that's the value of that role or what that role is worth? No. It just means that's what it's worth to that organization. And how do we know that? We know that because we know that in different organizations, you may have the same job title, you may have the same types of responsibilities and obligations, yet you're over here making this amount of money and they're over there making that amount of money. So we know it's not the role, it's tied to something else. It's tied to their bottom line. It's tied to their strategic initiatives. I hope you see where I'm going, right? And so they've decided that that role that you had was worth to them 50,000, 75,000, 100,000, 200,000, 300,000. That's what they've decided. And they've decided that based on their business's expenses, and their business's profit margin. Okay? Now, you leave that role and you come into entrepreneurship and you're like, cool, that's what they were saying that I was making. And so I want to make that amount of money. Or in your mind, you're like, oh, that's a benchmark. That's the benchmark for what my entrepreneurial limit is, or that's what my entrepreneurial, that's the amount of money that I want to make in my business. I just want to match that. Here's the problem with trying to match that. One, I just told you, because that number is based on that company's business. When you leave the corporate space and now come into entrepreneurship, now you're running your own business. Now you have to be thinking like they thought in terms of, what are my profit margins? What are my expenses? When you were in corporate and you were getting your check, I always call it that good check, right? When you were getting that good check, you got that good check every week, every 2 weeks, every month. You knew exactly how much it was going to be. Expenses were already taken out in terms of your payroll taxes and your health insurance. You knew what your household expenses were. And so you knew how to deal with that amount of money that was coming in all the time, right? And so for you, your expenses, you have your paycheck, right? So net of whatever it is, your taxes and your health insurance and whatever else they were taking out. You have your household expenses that you are now taking out of that. And what you were left with, you did with whatever, right? You call it, that's your savings, right? Because your savings, or some of us, there are no savings after that, right? That's just paycheck to paycheck, might be even negative. But you knew every week, every 2 weeks, every month. It was set, it was consistent. You come to the wild, wild west of entrepreneurship and ain't nothing consistent, right? At least in the very beginning and until you get your act together. Here's what's also different. You still have the money coming in. So think your net check, right? So that's the revenue that's coming in. You still have your household expenses. So that's the same. You have that coming in. What you have, though, is the additional thing that the corporation, the business that was hiring you before, had, which is that they had to look at, what are our business expenses and what is the profit we want to get. So now you have to think about that. So here's why your corporate salary cannot be the same thing as your entrepreneurial rates. You can't base it. That salary becomes data. It's not a benchmark. Because now, if you were making 200,000, say 100,000, 200,000 over in corporate, right? What comes out of that 100,000 or 200,000 is your living expenses. However you want to live, how, going on your trips, shopping, doing all the things that you want. That's what's coming out of it. Take that same $100,000 over into entrepreneurship, and what's coming out of it now? What's coming out of that money is those same living expenses, all of the things that you want to do in your life, but now we also have business expenses. Now we also have to be thinking about profit. And so the numbers are not equal, and therefore that number in corporate should not be a benchmark. It should just be data. What it tells you is that somebody thought that the skills that you had in that role to achieve that particular outcome that they hired you for was valued at least that much. Right? So now over here, what you have to be thinking about in entrepreneurship is I'm over here. I'm not just doing tasks. I'm not just doing my one little piece. What I am now doing is I am creating transformation, either for individuals or for organizations, which is still individuals, right? Because it's the employees or the leaders. But now you're looking at what is the value of the transformation that I provide as a speaker, trainer, coach, consultant, as an expertpreneur. What is the value? And that then becomes the benchmark, right? And so remember I said when you were in corporate as an employee, you exchange time for money. Now, as an expertpreneur, we are exchanging value for money. It's different. And so you can't look at that hourly rate. You can't look at that salary and say, okay, well, that's what it's going to be over here. No, because what are you doing now in entrepreneurship? You are solving huge problems. You're solving multi-million dollar problems. You're solving six-figure problems. You are saving people's lives, some of you, and their livelihoods. What is the value of that to someone? And that is the benchmark that you have to use. It's one of the benchmarks. And it's one of the reasons I started looking at all the marketers. I started looking at how when they do all of these webinars, and you've been on them, they do all these webinars and they do all this stuff. They do what's called value stacking. And so they'll tell you, you get this, and then you get this, and then you get this, and you get this. And they're value stacking. They're showing you the value, the value, the value, the value. And then they say, and this is the price. Because what they're doing is anchoring you in the value, anchoring you in what they are helping you to achieve, and you seeing the cost of that. And then they say, okay, but this is how much it's going to cost you. And what do we know? It costs a lot less because they've anchored you right into the value of what all of those things are. It's the same thing that you have to do now, is that you have to anchor your either individual clients or individual small business owners or your individual corporate clients. You have to anchor them in the value, and that value is related to the problem that they need solved. So thinking about that value stacking, I was like, how do we as expertpreneurs use value stacking? And I came up with the authority pricing model. And part of the authority pricing model is looking at how we value stack, so that when we come to the rate that we're going to share, it is actually based in reality and is actually market validated and not just a number that we picked out of the air, right? I always tell my clients, no matter what, they should be charging at least $7,500. Why? Because I know the value of their expertise. However, once you get down to it, once you get like down and dirty inside of who they're working with, like who is their ideal client and what are the problems that they're trying to solve and what is the transformation, that's just the baseline, right? We go up from there. Then we got to look at profit. We got to look at expenses. We got to look at all the things. And so the other thing that I started thinking about is that, okay, we have this value stacking. There's a lot of things that are involved in the value stacking, and I built a custom GPT. Her name is Aaliyah. She's part of our mogul operating system. I built her so that you don't have to worry about this. She already has the framework. You just give her information, and she will help you to determine what your actual market validated rate is based on the authority pricing model, based on value stacking. But then I started thinking about that we always get asked the question, how much money do you want to make in your business? And that number is generally based on revenue, right? So people ask you how much money you want to make, and we'll say, we want to make this amount of money. We want to make this amount of revenue. I've done it, right? Been doing it. So somebody says, well, how much do you want to make? But for those of us who are who don't like numbers, right? I don't love numbers. I'm a lawyer. But when you think about it, if we go from the revenue number, we're not taking into account our own lives. We're not taking into account our own, the way that we want to live, the way that we want to be able to show up in the world. And why this started to really become a thing for me is because I started also thinking about and doing a lot of research around Black women entrepreneurs and Black women experts, which there really isn't research around that. So I'm going to start doing some research. I want to build a study around that. But what I realized is that, they say like Black women are the most educated, but our business, and we start the most businesses, but our businesses make $24,000 a year. That's revenue. We make $24,000 in revenue. Profit, who knows, right? When you ask women and women experts, women business owners, I think if you ask many of them, like, what's your profit margin? They don't know. They have zero clue what their profit margin is or what's the profit on their business. They can tell you how much revenue they generated. And the other thing so that was one piece of it. Then I started thinking about, why are we like that, right? I'm always thinking about why is this happening? Why are we like that? Why am I like that? And what came to me was this idea is that because we are very service oriented, we were raised to be of service. And you'll hear, especially Black women, talk about this, right? That we want to serve, and you hear people online telling you, oh, you should serve. Serving in the context of Black women has a different um danger. Has a different danger than it does for non-Black women, because we were raised to serve, and many were raised in the church, and we were raised to think about being of service and to not think of worldly things or money, or we may have been brought up with the adage that money is the root of all evil. And so when we come into business, we take those things with us, and it impacts the way that it impacts the way we charge. It impacts the way that we show up. It impacts our ability to push back. And so, because we're service oriented, and because we have always had to prove more, even though we are all of that, and we have all the things, we have all the credentials, we have all the degrees, we have all the experience, we have all the certifications, we are her. Even though we are her, we always have to prove that we are her. And so when we continue to stay in that proving ground, we are more apt to say yes to exposure. We're more apt to say yes to free. We're more apt to undervalue ourselves and therefore undercharge. And so I'm on a mission. I've been on this mission for years about amplifying, amplifying, affirming, and elevating. I don't know why my brain just went blank. Amplify, affirming, and elevating the voices of Black women experts so that we are not erased. And originally I was thinking that is an outside job. Like we gotta, get the industry to change. We gotta get the industry to see us. But I realized it's an inside job, and we have to get us to see us first. We have to get us to stop undercharging. We have to get us to stop undervaluing. We have to get us to start profiting. And so inside of the authority pricing model, we're going to build in this whole idea of being profit centered. And for some of you, that may rub you the wrong way because you're like, oh, I should not be focusing on money. Well, I don't know if you're in business or you decide to become an entrepreneur. I don't know what else you should be focused on. You're in business to make money, right? And when you're in business to make money, when you make more money, you can do more things. When you make more money, you can be of better service. When you make more money, you can serve at a higher level. And so we have to get really, as Black women experts, that's who I'm focused on, we have to get really profit centered. That means that when we're looking at right now, right, we're however many days into January. What's today? The 6th. We're 6 days into January. Everybody's, figuring out what they're going to do and how they're going to end the new year, how they're going to end the year and all the stuff. And it's not going to be like 2025. Well, one of the ways that it won't be like 2025 is if you really become profit centered. If you understand that you have to build your business from the profit side, build it there, reverse engineer into revenue. And so that's one of the things I am going to be teaching in my masterclass on January 15th. It's called Stop Undervaluing, Start Profiting. We're going to be talking about 3 traps that you all fall into. We're going to be talking about what it means to be profit centered. I'm going to show you the formula for being profit centered, because I want to make sure that we as Black women experts, we start to make money from our mind. We used our mind to make money for everybody else. It is time for us to make money from our mind, but it has to come from the inside. The call is coming from inside the house. Some of y'all are answering the phone and giving the wrong information. So I need y'all to answer this call so that you can get the right information. Right? And so that we can change the trajectory of what's happening, so that we can stop undervaluing ourselves and start profiting in our businesses, so that we can teach people how to treat us. We cannot ask for people to do something for us that we are not willing to do for ourselves. So if we're okay with undervaluing, if we're okay with exposure, if we're okay with free, if we're okay with, I don't care what you do with it. Yeah, I'll come and, do 50 million things for you at $10. Then that's what they're going to pay you. And if you don't understand your own value and you don't understand what it takes to run your business from a profit perspective, then if you are making what amounts to, say, $20 an hour, $50 an hour, and then you come in entrepreneurship and you're like, but I'm charging 5 times that. I'm charging 10 times that. I'm charging, $250 an hour. I'm charging $500 an hour. For you, that might be like, oh, that is good. But if you're profit centered, you'll realize that that is bad. And that what it is doing is destroying you, destroying your credibility, destroying your value, and destroying your business. And so what I'm going to do is invite you January 15th to join me, 12 p.m. Eastern, live on Zoom. Join me for Start Undervaluing, Start Profiting Masterclass. If you're like, Kelly, I don't need a masterclass. I need to know how to do the things. I need to implement the things. Then you could join me at the 6th. Y'all see, I've been talking about the 6th for a while. It's coming up in March. I'm excited about that. We have our tickets on sale right now. They're 50% off right now, so you can go grab your ticket through the 16th. But January 15th, scan the QR code. So you see that QR code, scan the QR code and go register. It's free. It's 90 minutes. I'm going to show you why you cannot use your salary as a benchmark, and instead you should use it as data. And also why you need to shift from being revenue centered in your business and service focused to being profit centered. So let me know what you think about all this. Let me know your thoughts. I see some comments over there, but y'all know I can't see them. So hold on, let me go look at them. Oh, dumb people from let me take this off of here. You know what? I don't know why YouTube is so horrible. The people who show up on my YouTube, let me turn them off because they're so stupid. I should have turned that off a long time ago because it's been all on my video. Anyway, maybe I'll edit it and go back there. Anyway, just stupid questions. Anyway, listen, if you're ready, if you are ready to make sure that you're profit centered, that your business makes money in 2026, not that it just brings in revenue, but that you have money to live the life, right? And the living and the legacy that you deserve and you desire, then join me. Join me January 15th, 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can scan the QR code. You can also go to startprofiting.co. It's .co, not .com. .co, startprofiting.co. Go there and register, and I will see you on January 15th. If you're watching this on replay, let me know, Team Replay. Let me know if you have any questions. Let me know if you have any comments. I'm excited to see what happened over there on Substack because this is the first time I went live over there on Substack. So yeah, until next time, take care.